Good morning. As we begin, we would like to acknowledge that this service is being held by a community that gathers on the stolen lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to those Indigenous people who lost their lives in the colonization of this land and recognize that these Indigenous tribes are still today facing violations of sovereignty, territory, and water. We also give thanks for the earth we walk upon, the waters, the life-giving plants, and all the earth's creatures, as well as the winds, sun, moon, and stars. We recognize also that this is just a first step in moving towards right relationship with Native peoples and healing of the earth. Well, welcome to First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, a welcoming and spiritual community. My name is Meg Rivers-Wright, and I serve and coordinate as the parish administrator and membership coordinator. So for those of you who are visiting FPC for the first time, welcome. Please let us know you are here by filling out one of our visitor information cards that's in the pews and hand it to an usher, or drop it in the plate, or run over to me and put it in my hot little hand. If you would like a large print order of service or hymnal or an assisted listening device, please ask one of our ushers. Anyone is welcome to use one of these devices to listen to the service from another space in or around the building. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall, which is that away, one level down at the other end of the building, or in a breakout room if you're joining us online. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements in our order of service. There's a very important one in particular, about 2 Sundays from now, getting ready the Memorial Garden for its dedication at the beginning of November. I also invite you to check out our webpage for more information, and you can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts. And now, let us come together for a time of community, singing, and worship.
Good morning. I'm sorry to have to be with you virtually yet again this Sunday, but grateful to be able to be present at all. Grateful for the technology we have and for my continuing growing percentage of health. As you can hear, it's still in my voice, but I'm getting better every day. Our opening words are by Margaret A. Keip. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home, here, on earth, under the stars, linked with each other. And our music director, Chris, will be lighting our chalice as I read these words by George Kimmich Beach. In the mystery of life about us, there is light. It gives us a place to be, to grow, to rejoice together. It opens the pathways to love. In this place of friendship, there is freedom. Let the light we kindle go before us, strong in hope, wide in goodwill, inviting the day to come. Please rise now in body or in spirit, or in virtual attendance as well, and join in singing hymn number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Oh, Good morning. I am Rayla D. Baldwin-Mattson, your Director of Religious Education. And I ask that you please remain standing in body or spirit for our words, our covenant words, and singing of our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Hello. Oh, now I'm switching microphones. So today for our time for all ages, I'm just going to ask everyone of all ages to remain in their seat because I have a little demonstration and I want to make sure that everyone can see it. So our service topic today is harmony. And when I think of harmony, I think of everything just kind of flowing together. And one of the things I always told my children is whether you're Buddhist or Christian or agnostic or whatever your spiritual practice is, they all kind of still have to flow together. Do you know what I mean? So if you're praying or meditating, it's kind of doing the same thing. So what I like to say is, as Unitarian Universalists, one of the things that we believe is our interconnectedness, right? And I remember having a disagreement with someone once, and they said, what I do doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anyone else. But when COVID started spreading, remember, it really did show us that we were all connected. It started with one person and one place, and it literally spread everywhere in the world, right? So if something negative like that can spread everywhere in the world, what happens if we put out something positive? What if we put out something good? What about if we put out something loving? And so I like to show this visually, not only with kids, but with adults. Like what happens when we put something out there in the world? So this is just a metal pendulum. And so the first thing I'm gonna do is show you is what happens if I concentrate and send to my pendulum very negative energy. So I didn't spin it with this hand. I just thought not nice things. And did you see how it went out of control? What happens if I think loving, peaceful thoughts? See how it's more gentle and smooth? Now, what if I just completely think of calm and peace and relaxation? My pendulum stays calm. And so I work with people, I'm like, what are we thinking? What are we putting out in the world, right? And I had a foster kid a few months ago who said to me, it is so annoying that you are so happy and chipper at McDonald's and at the dollar store, and I give out stars and stickers and little tiny ducks. And he's like, why do you do that? He's like, it's so annoying. I said, well, I go up to the cash register to buy my coffee, and maybe that person's not having a very good day, right? And I'm kind, and I'm loving, and I make them laugh, right? And they're excited. And when they make my coffee, they are pouring kindness and lovingness into my cup, right? Versus if I'm angry and rude and mean, that energy of angry, rude, and mean is what they are now pouring into my cup. And so I said, if I can fill people wherever I go with love and kindness and happiness, then what if the rest of their day they are now pouring into other people love and kindness and happiness? And then it comes back to you, right? I went to Starbucks 2 weeks ago, and I walked in, and they always say hi to everyone in my town, but when I walked in, all the baristas stopped, and they were like, oh, Rayla! They're like, hi! You haven't been here in a few weeks. How are you? Do you want your same drink? And I was like, yeah, that's good. Even though there's a line, right? And so a woman who was waiting for her coffee goes, are you someone famous? She says, should I know you? And I'm like, no. I said, but every time I come in here, I show kindness and lovingness. I said, I've probably given them all a duck or a sticker or a star. And I said, so I remember them. So when I come in, they remember happiness and joy, and they immediately respond with happiness and joy and love. So I ask you today to think about just what are you putting out into the world? And we don't have a lot of children today, and I didn't ask anyone to light our chalice. So I'm going to put my own kid on the spot and ask Sage to come up again and light our chalice as we have our parade of teachers and children. Come on, Sage.
Looks like we're all set here. Thank you, everyone. Our words for prayer or meditation come from Richard S. Gilbert, titled, What is Holy? We sat on the beach transfixed. The moon not only glimmered across empty space, but shimmered over a lake now calm, in anticipation of what was to be. Slowly, timed by some celestial clock, the curved shadow of Earth moved across the lunar surface, left to right. We could not see it move. All we knew is that inevitably, as if driven by some chariot-riding god, it blotted the moon from our sight until the glimmering had become only a hinted circle of light, and the shimmering was swallowed in dark water. How long we sat there, I do not know. At last, tired in body and mind, refreshed in spirit, we silently left for sleep. Just another lunar eclipse, the paper said. Look again in December. But there would never be another night like that. Such moments are not repeated. It was a holiness that will not fade. Blessed be, and amen. Our next hymn is a hymn that is one of my favorites, although I know I say that about a lot of hymns, but this one truly is one that goes deep in my soul. And when I suggested it to Chris for this morning's service, he said it's one of his favorites too. So please join in singing our favorite hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song, and rise in body or spirit. Our reading today comes from Gitanjali by the Indian spiritual poet Rabindranath Tagore and tells of his spiritual journey. He writes, "The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood at this moment. Is it beyond thee to be glad with the gladness of this rhythm, to be tossed and lost and broken in the whirl of this fearful joy? All things rush on. They stop not. They look not behind. No power can hold them back. They rush on. Keeping step with that restless, rapid music, seasons come dancing and pass away. Colors, tunes, and perfumes pour in endless cascades in the abounding joy that scatters and gives up and dies every moment." Thus ends our reading. Our plate is shared this month with Out Metro West, a wonderful agency in this metro area that helps LGBTQ youth in particular and provides services for LGBTQ people. You can donate by writing a check and putting cash in the plate, or by going online to the website in the order of service, or to just our website, fpc-do-acton.org, or by text. And we split our plate every month with an agency to support the good works of this community, because in keeping our house whole, we also want to keep the world whole. And we see the connection between ourselves and others, as Rayla was talking about in the message for all ages today. And that's exemplified every week in our offering. So please give as you're able, and we will be gratefully received. Thank you, Trevor. So this fall, we've been having a 4-part sermon series about our spiritual types based on the book Four Spiritualities by Peter Tufts Richardson, which is out of print now, but a book that I've found really helpful for explaining how there are multiple different spiritual practices. So when we say the word spirituality, we might mean a multitude of different things. He divides spiritual practices into 4 types, which he correlates with the 4 personality types from the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Inventory, the MBTI. From the Myers-Briggs personality types, what's pertinent to know for these spiritual types is whether you're more of a thinker or a feeler, and whether you're more of a sensing person or an intuitive person. Sensing people focus on the here and now, are practical step-by-step thinkers, tactile, and are people who look at the details in how you move along a path, maybe. Intuitive people are more likely to follow hunches, read between the lines, and focus on the future. But if you are, like me, someone in the middle, or if you can't figure out whether you are intuitive or sensing or thinking or feeling, that's okay. It's not terribly pertinent here because we don't all fall neatly into 4 boxes anyway. What's important here is that we're showing how there are different spiritual paths, different things that we call spirituality, and we may define spirituality in different ways. So we began a couple of weeks ago with the spiritual type that was the type of the sensing feelers, who are likely to be on the journey of devotion. Our next type here is the other feeler type, the intuitive feelers, and their journey is the journey of harmony. And by harmony, you'll see what he means. Intuitive feelers are very imaginative people. Richardson says this about them. Childhood can be for them a wonder world of fairy tale, myth, and symbol. And he says, NFs are the world's idealists, combining a future orientation with a deep feeling for the well-being of others and the world. With N and F linked, values as core convictions combined with global dreams and visions of the good life of all people. The intuitive proclivity for symbol and metaphor combines with motivations for love and the well-being of the world, making NFs inspired communicators of the ideal. So you can think about that. If you're someone who lives in the world of metaphor, that's going to lead you towards a certain type of spirituality. And each of these different types has a different spirituality. Different things in the worship service, for example, might appeal to different people. For intuitive thinkers, it might be the sermon. For sensing feelers, it might be the story. For sensing thinkers, it could be rituals, those elements we repeat each week, like covenant and affirmation or joys and sorrows. And finally, for this type, on the journey of harmony, it's likely to be poetry or music. Myth, metaphor, poetry are the natural language of the intuitive feeler. Maybe also the story, too. There are 6 manifestations of the intuitive feeling journey of harmony. They are 1, the quest towards the authentic, actualized selfhood. 2, mystical harmony. 3, a life attitude of expectancy. 4, the importance of openness to healing and the place of the dream in this process. 5, social idealism, and 6, the focus on the process in relationships, familial and social. Now, those were all very intuitive, actually. So I want to explore some of these, beginning with the mystical harmony. Some people have mystical experiences often. Some people never have moments that they would describe as mystical. Something you might talk about in coffee hour is, have you had a mystical experience? I myself have had about 5 or 6 moments in my life that I would describe as classical mystical moments. The first one in high school, and one of the more recent ones was still about 10 years ago when I was walking a labyrinth in Romania. In the middle, about 20 years ago, was a time at row camp that I think I've spoken to you before about, when I stopped in the woods and put my hand against a tree and I said a prayer to God, a God I don't know if I believe in, but I occasionally pray to anyway. And I prayed that I would be able to have a child. And then I stepped back from the tree and I felt a force push me to the ground. Not like tripping where it comes from your feet, the movement towards the ground, but like a push where it comes from your back towards the ground. It was a strange, mystical, and completely baffling answer to my prayer at the time. Similarly, that time in the labyrinth, I entered posing a question in my mind, a question that I was posing to the universe or towards the god or goddess or my own psyche. And I received a mystic answer that I couldn't completely parse out at the time. And what I can say from these two experiences is that enlightenment, at least for me, never takes on the form that you expect, that I expect. However, I call these moments classical mystical moments because there are countless smaller moments that could be seen as mystical. Moments in the middle of a hymn when we're singing My Life Flows On, an endless song, where my heart swells open and just I feel connected with the entire congregation and even larger to the universe or God. Moments when we come together in social action and in the communal act of working for justice. I feel the connections between people strong and palpable, almost as invisible golden threads that make up the interdependent web. Moments in nature when the beauty of the sky or the tree or a dragonfly makes evident either a divine plan or the vast spiritual complexity of our world. I've told numerous people here when talking about the truth of New England and its glory and beauty that there are times when I've been driving from my home to First Parish Church and I just weep from the glorious beauty of the autumn. It's been one of the hard things about COVID, being cooped up in quarantine and missing so much of the glorious beauty of the world. These littler mystical moments can be as simple as being moved to tears suddenly or breaking out in goosebumps, the feeling of deja vu or that sudden spooky feeling where you say, someone just walked over my grave. For example, I was once in a Methodist funeral service and a woman stood up and sang in the garden. You know it. And he walks with me and he talks with me. I can't sing right now, but all the hairs on my arms stood up and prickles went up my spine as she sang. So yes, there can be physiological and emotional explanations for these sensations. And when we are in a thinking mode, that's where we'll go to. There's an explanation for everything. And I'm not saying that they're not. And certainly this was heightened emotional experience, but by mystical, I do not mean something that is outside of the physical world, otherworldly, although some can perceive it as such. Mystical to me just means these moments when you get a picture, big or small, of the world as larger than just yourself, when you feel the connections of the interdependent web, and when you see wholeness in a way beyond just the intellectual understanding of it. As the poet William Blake said in the poem Auguries of Innocence, to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That's what church does at its best, right? Hold eternity in an hour. Rabindranath Tagore echoes this in his work, The Religion of Man, when he says, in the Sanskrit language, the bird is described as twice born, once in its limited shell, and then finally in the freedom of the unbounded sky. Those of our community, he continues, who believe in the liberation of man's limited self in the freedom of the spirit shall retain the same epithet for themselves. So I see the NF spirituality, the journey of harmony, as very unified. For example, the quest for selfhood that Richardson talks about is greatly tied to the importance of healing in the place of the dream in the process. Coming into one's fullest self has to do with personal healing, and it is only after you resolve your deepest wounds that you can be fully actualized. The quest for selfhood, too, can have a mystical component. I think, for example, and particularly on this Indigenous Peoples Weekend, to think of the Native American traditions, where coming of age ritual sometimes involves a mystical experience wherein a young adult is visited by a spirit guide. Mystical moments can tell us about our deepest selves, about the quest for selfhood. Ralph Waldo Emerson, our transcendentalist forebear, said, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." And the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "I can't give you any advice but this, to go into yourself and see how deep the place is from which your life flows. And at its source, you will find the answer to the question of whether you must create. Accept that answer just as it is given to you without trying to interpret it. Perhaps you will discover that you are called to be an artist." Another example from the Taoist faith illustrates how healing oneself, the quest for selfhood, and the mystical are interwoven. Chuang Tzu wrote, or Chuang Chu as he's called in this reading, "Once Chuang Chu dreamt he was a butterfly flitting and fluttering around, happy with himself and doing as he pleased. He didn't know he was Chuang Chu. Suddenly he woke up, and there he was, solid and unmistakable Chuang Chu. But he didn't know if he was Chuang Chu who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was Chuang Chu. Between Chuang Chu and a butterfly, there must be some distinction. This is called the transformation of things." Of course, butterflies are often symbols of transformation, since they go from caterpillar to butterfly as examples of transformation in nature. And transformation can be part of this process of healing. Dreams can be mystical experiences. And so the story of Chuang Chu given by Chuang Tzu is a story containing all of these elements. It was Chuang Chu story given by Chuang Tzu. Sorry for my misrepresentation in the beginning there. The NF spirituality has, as part of its spirituality, a focus on process and relationship. This is part of the call to harmony. The importance of finding truth was in the NF spirituality. That was just important as finding truth is in the NT spirituality, is finding the right way for the relationship to be whole and healthy. Often this will mean that, unlike other spiritualities, which some have a preference towards order and sometimes hierarchical structure, the intuitive feeler will be pulled towards circles as a structure for group process. Richardson writes, "But the circle works only well for small groups and tribes. The challenge of harmony is to keep the values sponsored by the circle as society enlarges in complexity. Hierarchy, invented to serve complexity, pushes the individuals into roles of specialization and sets in motion the chain of command relationships that can be authoritarian in their impact." So remembering that each one of these journeys has their specializations and their strengths that they bring to solving the problems of the whole. This journey, the journey of harmony, has harmonious relationships as great importance for these intuitive feelers. The idealism that is embodied by this journey of harmony often means that intuitive feelers will find a problem, ponder it, but once they find an acceptable solution, they may race off to the next issue, just as the sensing types are starting down to business. Furthermore, whereas on a journey of unity, people are trying to bring different traditions together and find common ground and work on the differences, the idealism of the journey of harmony often means that people will bring together different traditions together and gloss over the differences. The emphasis is not on finding the common ground and working out the differences, but on supporting each other, appreciating each other. Richardson writes, "Not only can NFs suspend conflicting ideals without reconciling them, in the interest of harmony, they can also muddy distinctions together, as often occurs when attempt is made to reconcile very different religious traditions." He also says, "Those on the journey of harmony seldom claim that their way is superior, higher, or more advanced than the other journeys. However, NFs have a tendency to claim to combine all traditions. This is a caution that all of us in UUism can take to heart, where we have this attitude of saying that we combine all religious traditions instead of recognizing that there are distinctions and important differences between them." is an aspect of this intuitive feeling spirituality that is drawn towards religious pluralism. And this is one of the greatest connections between our UU faith and this intuitive feeling spirituality. And at the same time, it holds a warning to us because of the nature of the NF spirituality to look for harmony in different religions. But we can sometimes say that our religion encompasses all world religions. Sometimes in doing that, we can just be skimming the surface of these religions without ever experiencing their depth. And at times, we can express a sort of hubris where we are the culmination, the coming together, the solution to all the questions that all religions have been posing. At the same time, however, this belief in harmony, in the harmony between religions and between people, is a unique message as is part of our unique message as a religion. The ideal that the intuitive feelers hold forth is a worthy ideal, as expressed by our Unitarian forefather Henry David Thoreau, who said, "The age will be rich indeed when those relics which we call classics, and the still older and more than classic but even less known scriptures of all the nations, shall have still further accumulated, when the Vaticans shall be filled with the Vedas and Zendavestas and Bibles, with Homers and Dantes and Shakespeares, and all the centuries to come shall have successfully deposited their trophies to the forum of the world. By such a pile may we hope to scale heaven at last." There are two metaphors, or two mentors, I'm sorry, for this path of Germany. I'm sorry, my throat and voice today are getting me muddled, and my muddled head is getting me to make up words. Let me try that again. There are two mentors for this path of harmony that Richardson suggests in his book. The first is Rabindranath Tagore, from whom I have shared a poem with you. Tagore lived from 1861 to 1941, and his father was the leader of the Brahmo Samaj group in India, which is a group with some Unitarian connections, which would be worth exploring in another sermon. Tagore became an educator and writer and poet, writing over 100 books, writing poetry, stories, dramas, novels, prose. He was the first who called Gandhi Mahatma. He was the creator of an alternative school which would teach people using some of the values of this intuitive feeling spirituality he possessed. The second mentor for the journey of harmony is Jesus of Nazareth. As part of this journey of the journey of harmony is to find the authentic self. Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" The disciples gave different answers until Peter says that he is the anointed one, or the Messiah. It was Jesus who taught many of us to love thy neighbor as thyself, which is something important in the journey of harmony, with its emphasis on the harmonious relationships between people. And Jesus was a mystic, wandering in the wilderness, perhaps studying with the Essenes, learning from John the Baptist. Richardson gives an example of Jesus saying to Nicodemus, who he says is a sensing feeler, he says, "You must be born anew. The wind blows where it wills, and you will hear the sound of it, but you do not know whence it comes or whither it goes. And so it is with every man who is born of the Spirit." Nicodemus said to him, "How can this be?" And Jesus answered him, "Are you a teacher of Israel, and yet you do not understand this? Truly, truly, I say to you, when we speak of what we do not know, and bear witness to what we have not seen, but you do not receive our testimony." So for Jesus, an intuitive feeler, the language of poetry, myth, and metaphor is the natural language. Jesus never answers a question straight up with like concrete details. He spoke in parables, and allusions to scripture sprinkled heavily throughout his language. For literal thinkers like STs, it was and is very confusing. So how ironic it is that so many people take Jesus's words literally today, when he was never meant to be understood literally. He was speaking in metaphor. The final path is the path of the peacemaker, the path of those who, as Richardson writes, are the great carriers of traditions from one branch to another. They teach us, or when I say the final path, I meant this path is the path of the peacemaker, the path of those who, as Richardson writes, are the great carriers of traditions from one branch of the culture to another. They teach us about tolerance, pluralism, process, and healing. But if there's one thing we've learned in this exploration of this type, is that there are many spiritual types, and we cannot let any one path be the combined path, and to let it, in its goal of harmony and peace, preempt the others. Rather, we must hold all the spiritual types as valid and useful. We can use this journey of harmony to appreciate the pluralism, but we must also let ourselves be open to truly holding the creative tension that different personality types and spiritual types bring, not glossing over the differences. And so as we continue to explore these spiritual types, the journey of harmony brings us into that space of how to explore. I close with Richardson's words about the goal of life, which is what spirituality is all about. The goal of our four spiritualities complement one another. For spirituality is perceived through four lenses. We can call the absorption ideal, NT, the compassion ideal, SF, the stewardship ideal, ST, and the fulfillment ideal, NF. To know the one, to be devoted to the oneness in others, to guide and guard the integrity of oneness in the world, and to explore potentials for the realization of the one, all form an intimate acquaintance with spirituality, with spiritual reality, the goal of life. Our native journeys, fully explored, bring all of us together in the fullest human integrity and kinship. When you hear the call deep in your spirit, follow, deepen, return. For in your life, you may become one in eternity. May it be so. Our closing hymn is one that talks about different spiritual paths in many ways. In Wake Now My Senses, it talks about different paths in each of its 5 verses, which we're going to sing 4 of today. 1, 3, 4, and 5. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing online as well. Our closing words are by Sarah Moores York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gift that they are, and, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Please join in our closing song.
Peace.